The last couple of weeks, Pastor's been talking to you about attitude of faith, and attitude of transformation. This morning, I want to talk to you about attitude and the power of your words. And everybody said, I was going to say, maybe I should leave. Because this is going to step on toes. It's not a bad thing. It's a good thing. Good, healthy criticism, critique. Pastor has been talking about a couple of different things, like how you have the ability to change your attitude by the way you change your thinking. I was listening to last week's sermon. He talked about how that you are not necessarily a victim of other people's attitude. You are a victim of your own attitude. And he brought up a whole bunch of people in the Bible that had to have certain attitude adjustments regardless of what it was that what was going on in their lives. We all know that to be true. And the reality of it is that's really like, it's pretty to preach, but unbelievably hard to walk out, right? Like to be able to realize that I have some sort of certain control over my attitude is of utmost importance, and it's really awesome to hear on a Sunday morning, but then you got to go walk it out Monday through Friday, and it's like, I don't think you understand what it is that I'm going through Monday through Friday. It is, the attitude change is hard, and one of the reasons it's hard is because if you muster up the courage to change your attitude with a lack of submission and obedience to Jesus, then you begin to think that you can do life on your own, which is a very scary place to be in. When in reality, an attitude change has more to do with a transformation of heart of what Jesus is doing in your life. You're a pastor, how do you know the difference? How do you know the difference between you mustering up your attitude and you allowing Jesus to change your attitude? Really easy. One sticks and stays, and the other one fizzles out quickly. There are litmus tests out there to judge your progress in yourself and in your relationship with Christ in your attitude change. And like I said, an attitude change in Christ is a heart transformation, whereas without Christ, it's just a change in mood. And the reality of it is some of us have large, quick-moving pendulums when it comes to our moods. They go from really happy to not so happy really quick. To think that we can just, as the King James Version says, think ourselves happy without relationship in Jesus is foolish. Even if King James is the only translation that actually uses that, and the story is found in Acts. And if you read that story, you realize he's not thinking himself happy. He's thinking himself happy in relationship with Jesus. This is not something I have the ability to do. This is something that God does in my life. The reality is that we live in a world of fools that think that we can do it on our own. And the reality of it is that we have full wounds of wisdom that lack impartation on actually how to live well. Romans 1:21, verse 23 talks about this. It says, "For although they knew God, they neither glorified him nor gave him thanks, but their thinking became futile and their foolish hearts were darkened. Although they claimed to be wise, they became fools." Without God as our reference point, it's nothing but a show. And we are left with competing opinions. T.S. Eliot says that the cycles of heaven in 20 centuries bring us further from God and nearer to dust. But Jesus specifically talks about using God as our reference point and a blessing that comes from it as such. In Matthew 5, verse 6, it says, "Blessed are those who hungry and thirst for righteousness, for they will be filled." As we hunger for a relationship with God, I believe we begin to see our hearts change. And with that heart change becomes an attitude change. But one of the best litmus tests that we have to see an attitude change, one of the things that we use daily that you absolutely 110% will always use, you have to use on this side. But as long as you got breath in your life, this is what you use, and this is your litmus test for an attitude change. That is the words that come out your mouth. Proverbs 18, 20, and 21 says, for the fruit of their mouth, from the fruit of their mouth, a person's stomach is filled. With the harvest of their lips, they are satisfied. The tongue has power of life and death, and those who love it will eat its fruit. A couple of things about Proverbs I think is pretty interesting. I don't know if you guys are like massive studiers of the Bible, but there is so much about the Bible that is like not on these pages, that like context. Why have you ever wondered why Paul is so stern in 1 Corinthians and so full of love in Philippians? Like, there's a reason for that. There's an absolute reasons for that. Sometimes, like, I don't want it to diminish the words that you read on this book, because these words are life-changing 100%. But to understand, like, the point of Proverbs. Have you ever read Proverbs? Anybody in here ever read Proverbs? It's terribly convicting, right? And you don't really quite know where you stand. You want to stand on the good foot, but the reality of it is that Proverbs is really teaching us two different things here: what it means to be a fool and what it means to be wise. This is the goal of Proverbs. There's actually 5 different kinds of fools we find in Proverbs. And shameless plug for Forming Men, I'm not going to talk about all 5 of them this morning, but if you are interested in learning about those 5, we are going to be talking about them in the next couple of months in our Forming Men's group, and I'm pretty excited about it. But here's just a couple of them. And I won't talk about them in detail. I'll just give you a quick idea. Number 1, the simple fool. This person lacks discernment. Number 2, the stupid fool. He's thick-headed, morally deficient. Number 3, the sensual fool. This is an arrogant individual. This is pleasure-seeking. This is your bro culture, your toxic masculinity that we hear about. That's the sensual fool. Number 4, the scoffing fool. Their heart's disdain and contempt. And the worst, the most dangerous, is the stubborn fool. It's the self-confident, closed-minded fool. See, Proverbs is a book that has a couple of different themes that we find in it that they talk a decent amount about. It talks a lot about money. It talks about family and relationships. Proverbs talks about sex. But the most important thing that Proverbs talks about, the thing that it talks about the absolute most, is the power of your words. That our words have the ability to bring great healing, or that our words have the ability to bring great harm. So if that's the case, then it's not just the toddlers that are trying to learn how to speak, but it is even us today. No matter how long you have been a Christian, no matter how long you have lived on earth, that God, the Holy Spirit, is learning and teaching and showing us the power of our words matter. Think about the words that you spoke this last week. Were they words of encouragement? Were they words that discouraged? Were the words that you spoke this week, did they bring healing, or did they bring harm? Were your words full of truth or falsehoods? Did they honor, or did they dishonor? You're like, but you Pastor, you have no idea what it is that I go through. Anytime you have to justify, I'll just leave that there. Growing up, we heard the phrase all the time, sticks and stones may break my bones, but words will never hurt me. And I was thinking about that as I was writing, and I was like, man, I haven't heard my kids say that one time. I don't even know if they know that saying. It's like, that fizzled out. You know why it fizzled out? Because it's not true. Sticks and stones will break my bones, and your words will absolutely destroy me. We've heard the phrase, if you have nothing good to say, don't say anything at all. I don't know if this is a relatively new one to me. Your words are like toothpaste. Once they come out, you can't put them back in the tube. Have you ever been a part of a conversation where you're like, I definitely shouldn't say that, and I really wish I could get that back in my mouth? Just me. Cool. All right. From early on in life, we've been trained to know the power of our words. And we have felt the impact or the lack of wisdom as it relates to our words. Whether it be in the playground or in our living room, whether it be at school or in the office, we need to be reminded regularly that our words bring death or life. I think this message really is very important because we live in a very wordy world right now. Our words are more visible than ever thanks to technology and social media. Our words actually travel further than we could have ever thought or imagined, actually. Thank you, technology and Facebook, right? But Jesus has something to say about the things that come out of our mouths. And if this isn't a conviction, then I would be concerned maybe about your heart, if I'm real honest. We see this in Matthew 12:36. It says, on the day of judgment, people will give account for every careless word they speak. If that doesn't cause you pause to think, man, I'm probably going to be up there a while. I was talking to my boys this morning as it was 5 a.m. Zeke's just barely hanging on over here. Stay with me, buddy. You can do it. We ain't got much longer. As they got up this morning and they were doing their business and they were mowing and they were weed eating and I looked from afar and Hampton is ripping the weed eater out of Zeke's hand, and I was like, hey, what are we doing? We get done and we come in and I'm talking to them about their words. I'll be honest with you. I've talked about this before. I'm a pretty routine guy on Sunday mornings. We got to do certain things at a certain time in a certain way. And if I don't do that, then it just gets me thrown off. I like some quiet time. I want to read through my message as many times as possible. And that's pretty hard to do when you got two yahoos. And yet this morning it was like, there was just, and maybe that's where my emotion comes from. It was just such a beautiful moment to be able to talk to them about, hey, bud, I know you're 13, and I know he's 10, and I know he absolutely gets on your nerves, and he's frustrated. He was mad because Zeke didn't wear pants to weed eat. I think he did that on purpose, if I'm honest. So Hampton had to weed eat. I get the total frustration, but your words matter, bro. Your words matter, even to your 11-year-old brother. How you treat people matters. The things that you speak to them matter. And oh, by the way, if you're not worried about it on this earth, just so you know, the day of judgment, you're going to have to account for every careless word you speak. Now, you can throw that out with the bathwater if you want to, but I believe that that's true. Why? Because Jesus wants us to bring life to people. He does not want us to bring death to people. As a parent, what are the words that you're speaking to your kids? Maybe put down the megaphone and roll out the doormat and let them speak. You are not going to understand them. From the time we birthed our boys to 13 years, I don't think I've ever understood them fully. And as they get older, I thought this was going to be easier. It's not easier. And Heather and I are pastors, which means we got a lot to say, which is of benefit. You find really cool moments like this morning. We have the ability to say, so what is like heaven going to be like? Oh man, it's going to be so great. Well, what is that? I got no idea actually, but it's going to be good. Oh, so like the day of judgment, what is that? What is that? So there's some really great moments. And then there's some moments where I want to teach you a thing or two instead of just listening to their hearts. What are the words that you're speaking to your spouse? Are they life or are they death? What are the words that you say to the person that cut you off in traffic? I would assume they're not PG. What about the person who doesn't see the world the way you see the world? The tongue has the power of life and death, and those who love it will eat its fruit. The Message translation says it this way, and I love Eugene Peterson because it's like less words. Words kill. Words give life. They're either poison or fruit. You choose. Our words matter. In conversations and in emails, in texts and in blogs, our phone calls and social medias, tensions in our families, tensions in our workplaces, tensions in our churches. The reality of it is this proverb is thousands of years old. And is one of the most relevant pieces of wisdom that we have even today. Our words, we have to understand, start wars. Our words create mass destruction. Our words have the ability to separate people. Our words are incredibly powerful. The Proverbs are not here to just increase our quality of life. The Proverbs are not here and given to us just to make us feel comfortable. No, the Proverbs are here to let us know what is at stake. That it is either life or death. To choose the way of the foolish is to choose the way of death. To choose the way of wisdom is to choose the path of life. Either way, I promise you'll get an attitude change. Death words are words that label. Death words are words that marginalize. Death words are words that condemn. Death words are words that seek to diminish others. And wherever death words are spoken, it leads everyone to the path of death. And you're like, man, Pastor, that's a little extreme. Check this out. It's a rabbinic saying that says, wherever one speaks ill of another, it is as if that person were killing three people. The speaker who has perpetrated the evil, the object of the language whose reputation has been slandered, and the one who has listened to the slander and is now an accomplice. You're like, oh, I just listened to it. No, you need to understand, you welcomed that. That's good conviction of the Holy Spirit. You're like, no, I was just listening to it. Well, we were listening, if we're really honest with ourselves, because we don't want to put the person in their place by saying, hey, that's gossip. You can go find someplace else for that. I don't need to be a part. Like, I just don't want to make someone feel uncomfortable. Oh, you're an accomplice then. Someone way smarter than I wrote that, not me. As I begin to close, one of the other things that I think is super important to realize in paying attention to the outside world is the inside world as well. See, it's really easy to sit and stand and talk to you about your words and how important they are and how they can bring life and they can bring death. But what is it that you think about yourself? Can we go back to talking about the outside world instead of the inside world? See, many of us have words that are so lodged in our subconscious, that are so lodged in our souls, that they now have power over us. There's a new song that came out called Kind by Corey Asbury. I had thought about playing it this morning, but it was like, it would have been kind of awkward. Not like playing it up here, like playing it on the speakers. And it's just, we'll play it for you in a couple weeks. It'll make you cry. And I'll be 100% honest, it's not really like a corporate worship song, but the words are powerful. It's really good. But he makes the statement in the second verse that he knows that the amazing grace is good. He just doesn't know that he can accept it for himself. And it stems from what it is that he's done in his life. Every single one of us have a past. Every single one of us know what it is that we've thought. And all of us at some point in time, at least I have, at least I'll have the ability to look at you and admit it and say, I'm not sure I believe in God's grace. I have seen God's grace. I've even received God's grace, but it is hard for me in this moment to think that I am good enough for God. For some of us, these words have identified us for so long, and they may be as a result in someone speaking those things into our lives, to get you to think that you're not good enough, to get you to think that you're not smart enough, that you're not pretty enough, that you're not skinny enough, that you're not as an intellectual, that you're not strong enough, that you're not accomplished enough. For the teenagers, that you're not old enough. We've heard these words before, and unfortunately, many times we have internalized them. These words do such a good job of diminishing us to the point of almost paralyzation. I'm here to tell you this morning, all of those words are nothing but lies. God speaks a better and a truer word over your life today. And that those death words are nothing more than that, death. And they do not outlast the promises of God. I remember as a kid hearing certain things, and some of the things that were spoken into my life, some of the things that I just kind of attached to my life, that I was, a dumb jock, that if I was ever going to do anything with my life, it better be in sports or maybe a PE teacher, because I got an A every year. Every year. I wasn't smart enough. I remember one of the people nearest and dearest and closest to me. I can't even say this second service, but I'll tell you, it was like never in a million years did they think I'd be able to graduate college. And listen, I was a hot mess. I completely understand. But you internalize those things. And for whatever reason, we allow those things to be louder than the promises of God that have spoken over your life day in and day out. And God is here this morning saying, listen, you need to understand the power of your words. You need to understand what it's like to speak life into people. You also need to understand that the things that have spoken into your life, if they do not match up with my word, that they need to be dead. They need to be out of your life. They need to be rid of. Because my promises are so much powerful. And my promises will always come to pass. You'll never change or have a long-lasting attitude change. I don't care how disciplined you are, without a heart transformation that is rooted in the relationship with Jesus Christ. You want the chains broken off of your life. You want generational negativity off of your life. You want gossip off of your life. You want to stop spewing those death words to people? Here's 4 scriptures. And the first one, you've heard me say it a lot. Philippians 4:9. Whatever you have learned or received or heard from me or seen in me, put it to practice. You want to stop spewing death? Put it to practice. Your prayer, your time in the Word. You're a part of a community, not just on a Wednesday night or a Sunday morning. And the God of peace will be with you. Isaiah 41:10. So do not fear, for I am with you. Do not be dismayed, for I am your God. I will strengthen you and help you. I will uphold you with my righteous hand. That is a promise from God. Matthew 11:28-30. Everyone knows it. Come to me, all who are weary and heavy burdened, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I am gentle and I am humble in heart. It's 2 things that you will never get from the world: gentle and humble. But when we rest in Jesus, we find that gentle, humble heart. You will find rest for your souls, for my yoke is easy and my burden is light. Psalm 32:8. I will instruct you, and I will teach you the ways that you should go. Listen to me. If you try and go out and just speak kindly, you'll be able to do it for a little while. And then someone's going to speak a death word to your life. And I'm not saying you'll never hurt. I'm not foolish enough to say, or naive enough or dumb enough to say that what I'm saying isn't that's hard. To consistently speak these words, to consistently speak life into people. I'm not saying it is easy. What I'm saying is Jesus said his burden is light, and that he would teach me. And I don't have to do it by myself. That there is a genuine heart transformation. And it may not be what you think it should be. But can I tell you, at 38 years old, and I know some of you guys are older than me, and you've experienced way more than I have. Can I just tell you, at 38 years old, the heart transformation, and I say this boldly professing the power of Jesus, not boldly professing who Sean is. The power of Jesus in a person's life. I've had to fight those internalizations. Heather knows. You're like, for the first 5 years, if there was any conflict at all, any deep discussion, it's like, hey, you're not a terrible person. Because I just assumed I was bad. But we have to be in relationship with Jesus. What is your prayer life like? What are the things you're putting to practice? You seek the peace of God, and God answers with, put the things to practice. And you will start speaking words of life that will flourish people more than just my words could. I don't want to just be a person. I want to be a community that speaks life. I don't want to just be Pastor Sean or Dad or brother. Son that speaks life. I want to be a community, you and me together, that speaks life, not just in here, but out in there. It's easy to put on a smile on a Sunday morning, realizing that your week has been nothing but hell. And it's easy to stand before God and say, all I want is you. I really want to focus on all of the stuff. I really want to focus on the hurt of this week. I want to focus on the financial stuff. I want to focus on whatever it may be. I want to focus on that. But in this presence, in this moment, I want you. God fills you to go out there. This cannot stay in this community. We have to be banded together in here. But it changes the